Some myths are so obviously false that you'd think that nobody would believe them. But I guess some people are so ill-informed that they'll believe whatever they hear. Enter the Black Egyptian hypothesis. Put simply, this is the belief that the ancient Egyptians, of pyramid fame, were, contrary to popular belief, racially sub-Saharan Africans. I'm not one of those people who believe race to be some made-up, intangible thing, but applying it to ancient peoples is more than a little anachronistic. All the same, they were a race. Every ethnicity is in one grouping or another, so we can draw a conclusion based on the extant evidence. They were North African, akin to peoples from the Middle East, but not necessarily the same. Over the years, there's undoubtedly admixture with other North African groups, Middle Easterners, Black Africans, and whites. But they were, as far as modern genetics can tell, pretty similar to modern Egyptians. But that doesn't stop these people from spreading misinformation. I have found a video, admittedly from 2016, that contains 6 commonly made claims these people push, which I will debunk in order, and then speak in general terms about this ideology at the end of the video. Melanin is about the least useful way to determine race you could think of. No one is saying that the Egyptians were super pale Scandinavian types. They were pretty tan. And there isn't set melanin ranges for each race. There are plenty of East Asians who are as pale as whites, and people from the Indian subcontinent who are darker than most Africans. People in the Solomon Islands are often just as dark as Black Africans, and yet are a totally different group. And so it's not implausible that people of Egyptian stock happen to be a bit darker complected than other North African and Middle Eastern peoples. But if modern genetics is to be believed, then they looked probably the exact same as modern Egyptians. And there's not much visual difference between an Egyptian, an Iraqi, and a Moroccan. And besides, I can't find any proof that this is even true. Some sources online even say that melanin barely preserves in mummies, so this quote-unquote fact can be safely discarded. Yeah, that's not how blood types work. Only a bit under 13% of Egyptians have that blood type, and people in Israel, Jordan, Algeria, Bahrain, Tunisia, and other countries in the region have more. It's actually way more common in East Asia than East Africa. This is just racial pseudoscience at its worst. This is purely disingenuous. Kemet means black land, and refers to the dark color of the fertile land in the Nile Delta. As for artistic self-portrayals of the Egyptians, as seen in the background, they tended to portray themselves as darker complected than Libyans and Levantine peoples, but much lighter than sub-Saharan Africans. See this example of an Egyptian, an Assyrian, a Nubian, and Libyans. There was likely some truth to this, but was also an artistic convention, so people could tell who was who. And besides, being darker than a Libyan isn't the same as being black. This is the only thing in this video so far that's definitely true. The orthodox explanation of this, however, isn't that Egypt was a racially African nation, but rather that, thanks in large part to the Nile, it was in constant trade and contact with black lands to the south. Nubia especially had a huge impact on Egypt, and vice versa, seeing as Nubia was right on their borders. The Nubian state of Kush, in fact, managed to conquer Egypt, and so there was, for a while, a black dynasty of pharaohs. But Nubia was not Egypt. The two were neighbors, and at times where the cultural boundaries between the two lay was hazy, but they were certainly different groups. Modern racial terminology didn't exist back then. Black being used to describe Egyptians is better evidence than what we've seen so far, but ultimately proves nothing. There is no source for this study I can find, and other studies show an increase in African ancestry in Egypt between antiquity and now. DNA evidence on ancient Egypt is limited, but all of it points to Egyptians being of North African stock. The Black Egyptian hypothesis is false, racist, reductive, and above all, a waste of time. I get the motivation of Africans, especially blacks in the US, who want to connect their heritage to some part of the ancient past, some great civilization to call their own. But they already have that. Between Nubia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Great Zimbabwe, and Mali, and many others, there is a wealth of fascinating African cultures and empires. But all of that gets pushed to the side in favor of Egypt's brand recognition. It's like a Greek wanting to overlook their heritage and instead push a conspiracy theory that the Islamic Caliphate was Greek. It's stupid and completely pointless. I could go through other claims that are made. I could go through all kinds of different evidence. I could talk about how the ancient Egyptians spoke a Semitic language, and not an Afro-Asiatic one. I could talk about alternate ancient descriptions of them, rather than the ones these people use. I could cite study after study, but it wouldn't really change any minds here. But the information's all out there on the internet. So for now, I'll end it here. If you have any video recommendations, leave them in the comments.